Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from FantasyFootballScout.co.uk. My name is David and today we're going to have a look at how my team got on in the horror show that was Game Week 11. And we're also going to have a look at what my plans are for Game Week 12 as I look to bounce back from a dreadful timeout in Game Week 11, which I know all of us experienced. I haven't seen many scores over about 40 points at an absolute push. So first things first, if you had a bad one in Game Week 11, then try not to let that temper your mood as you prepare for Game Week 12. We all had a bad game week. It was kind of coming. We'd been seeing a lot of game weeks in FPL recently where it didn't really matter who you had. You largely could get by. We've seen teams without Salah doing well. We've seen teams without Haaland being able to keep up as well. We've seen teams without Trippier being able to do good work as well. Myself and Mark on General's orders have gone very different directions of our team so far this year, and largely we've been in the same sort of overall rank bracket for most of the campaign. So we were due a bad game week for everybody, and that's what happened. It was a good game week to have a bad game week because everyone else was largely in the same boat. And so hopefully that means as you look forward to Game Week 12, you can look forward to it with a little bit of hope that it will be better than last time out. And the other thing is that with everybody doing so bad at once, it means that, really we can look at our teams and think, do you know what? It's not too bad. And we shouldn't see a game week like that for many years to come. Again, I would like to hope. Fingers crossed. I've probably jinxed it now. But yeah, we'll have a look at how my team's getting on and what my plans are for Game Week 12. I'm still mulling over when to play my wildcard. It's still in my back pocket. I would like to use it as late as possible, but I might be forced into having to use it sooner than I'd like based on the current injury crisis. But I'm going to see what I can do to get through with my free transfers alone. Now, before we get into the team itself, another reminder, of course, that it's never too late to sign up to Fantasy Football Scout membership. You can still save up to 20% on your package, whichever one you'd like to go for, and you're going to have access to all sorts of incredible stuff: match day data, Opta-powered tools and tables, team transfer planners and drafts from the best fantasy managers in the world, including last year's winner and a couple of other former champions as well. Make yourself sure that you've got that ready for Game Week 12. It will help you bounce back from despair, I would imagine. So, speaking of despair, my Game Week 11 team is now on the screen. So for the benefit of you podcast listeners, I will walk you through this 24-point masterpiece. So had Flecken in goal, got me 0 points. But actually, in the end, didn't really matter that he got 0 points in the sense that Turner also got 0. Flecken, of course, conceded 2 goals in the first half and got substituted at the interval, so that's 0 points for him. Shimmikas didn't start against Luton, so just a 1 point for him. 5 points for Anderson against Burnley because he did play the whole game, kept a clean sheet, but unfortunately was yellow carded. Cash got me nothing as well with what happened with him against Nottingham Forest. Maddison got me 1 point and, of course, came off injured. And just so that you know, I actually screenshotted this before his flag went on in FPL, so there's another flag for him. Diaby got 2 points. Matoma got me 6. Saka got me 2. Alvarez got me 2. Haaland, of course, got me 1. Now, unfortunately, I feel like Game Week 11 was a little bit of a missed opportunity because I didn't go with Captain Haaland, and on Saturday evening, I was feeling quite smug. I will have to confess to that. It was a low moment. I don't like to be smug in FPL. And don't worry, I didn't gloat on social media or anything, and it's a good job I didn't, because if I had, I would have been made to look a right mug. Because, of course, Salah then also blanked against Luton. I mean, the fact that Haaland blanked against Bournemouth and Salah blanked against Luton in the same game week is just incredible. The chances of that happening were just, infinitesimal in my opinion. A bit of a missed opportunity because I felt like I would be rewarded, and sort of I was, because Haaland got 1 point, Salah got 2, so I did get a couple of extra points out of it. But yeah, I do feel like that was a bit of a missed opportunity. But hey, these things happen in FPL, and we just move on to the next few games. I obviously, of course, rolled my transfer in Game Week 11 because I didn't really have too many issues with my team. I was quite happy with the way it was looking. And as I keep saying, I'm looking to try and wildcard as late as I can. At the moment, my sights are set on Game Week 19, which is after that blank game week, because then it would allow me to heavily invest in Man City and Brentford, I should say, who actually have quite good fixtures before that blank. I could invest in them, sell them for 18, so I can maximise Game Week 18 without having to use a free hit. And then, of course, with Brentford and Man City also having good fixtures after Game Week 18, I can wildcard them back in rather than necessarily having to spend a free hit on getting through Game Week 18. So that's my current plan. Game Week 16 fixtures also look very nice, which we'll have a look at a little bit later on in the video. They look really good as well. And that's also a possible wildcard opportunity because there's a good set of swings for lots of teams, from good to bad and bad to good, etc., which could warrant a wildcard. Then, However, of course, if you wildcard in Game Week 16, you obviously would probably want to go heavy on Man City and Brentford based on their fixtures being really good across that run, but then you are leaving yourself having to solve the Game Week 18 problem, without the use of a wildcard to come after. So my plan has been, can I build a Game Week 16 wildcard-esque squad between now and then by only using free transfers? So of course I wanted to bank a free transfer at the earliest possible opportunity, and I did it in Game Week 11, and I'm kind of hoping, and I was hoping that I could do it for Game Week 12, to only spend one of them for the next few weeks, and really only get to a point where I have to spend them both in a few weeks down the line as we head into Game Week 16. Whether or not I'm going to be able to do that for now is going to be tricky, because after one game week I all of a sudden have an absolute plethora of flags. Now, as I said, the team on the screen right now, I screenshotted this earlier on in the week ready for the General's Orders podcast, so it means that the flags are not quite as updated as they should be, but I mean, most of you will know where they stand now. So Flecken, still yellow flagged, came off with this knock and did have an illness a couple of weeks ago as well. Cash, of course, came off as well, so he's yellow flagged. I've also got a flag on Maddison, but we don't really know the extent of that. Van der Ven is the one that I think is the one I'm most gutted about, because he was a big differential for me. And he's currently got a very dark orange flag. He's 25% likely to play the next game week, and that's based on Postecoglou not ruling him out for Game Week 12, but basically saying I expect him to be out for some time, and we'll know more in a few days. So I'm kind of anticipating Van der Ven's 25% dark orange flag to become a 0% red flag by the time the Game Week 12 deadline comes around. And of course, you will have noticed the big red flag that sat on my bench for 3 or 4 or 5 game weeks now, of course, Purvis Estupinian as well. So that in total is 5 flags, which is, a little bit of a tricky situation. But I'm hoping not to wildcard for this game week. I don't think I need to necessarily break my team or completely get myself a new one to get through this injury crisis. And the reason that I feel confident doing that is from some of the lessons that I've managed to learn throughout the course of the campaign so far. F. Stupinan still being on the bench is testament to the fact that I have actually been able to get through one massive injury crisis before. I think it was around Game Week 7 or 8. I think it was. We all remember, of course, when we just had an absolute ton of red flags, orange flags, yellow flags, just all the colours. And I was as affected by that as many other people, but rather than make a string of transfers, I felt that if I could just get my starting 11 okay, I was happy to carry a couple of injured players on the bench, maybe sell them at a later point, give them an opportunity to come back. So I'm going to try and do the same thing in Game Week 12, if at all possible, because I do think building towards something that's not dissimilar to what a wildcard squad would look like in Game Week 16 by using my free transfers between now and then, and wildcard in Game Week 19, I think can be really impactful. And I've always wanted to wildcard that late, so to be honest, I just want the opportunity to try and experiment with that. And bearing in mind that my overall rank is currently 112,361, I feel like I'm in a place where I can try a few different things compared to what I would normally do, because a lot of the points are sort of already in the bank, so to speak. So that's kind of what I hope to do with this team. Now, of course, I'm recording this on Wednesday, and you might be watching this on Thursday, Friday, so there may, of course, be some things that have changed by the time you watch this, and so the flag situation does mean that I am in a position where I'm not going to be able to, say with certainty what my transfer plans will be for Game Week 12. So do keep an eye on any of the content that we've got out there, or perhaps social media as well, if you want to know what my final decisions were, if you find that helpful. For now, I can only really talk to you about a sort of theoretical flowchart of ideas based on what may or may not happen with these flags between now and Friday, and Saturday. Friday being when we get all the team news, Saturday, of course, being the deadline. And I would, of course, encourage everybody else out there to sort of come up with a flowchart of their own, either in your head or maybe write it down on paper. I know there's some good tools out for that there. And also, of course, planfpl.com is a good way of building some potential ideas for what your transfers might be. So think about that. Let the midweek football play out, because, of course, we may end up with more flags from that, and then make your decisions rather than making your transfers now. And so, this is what my team currently looks like for Game Week 12. I'll read it out again for the benefit of the podcast listeners. Flecken's still in goal, but I'm probably going to sell him this week. So he's starting to sort of remind me that my new transfer is probably going to be starting in goal. Van der Ven was in the starting lineup, and so that's where he is there. But of course, I've actually now swapped him for Shimikas. So it's Shimikas, Anderson, and Cash are my 3 starting defenders for now. Maddison, Diaby, Matoma, Salas, unchanged midfield with the captain's armband on Saka, as he plays Burnley at home, and then Haaland and Alvarez up front. Now, I'll start with the forwards because I think that's a relatively easy place to start. Of course, just apologies again, this graphic is now out of date by the Tuesday night Champions League exploits of Manchester City. Haaland is already back in action. He was training ahead of the Young Boys game, played in it, scored twice, came off after an hour, so I'm no longer worried about him. So that's one less flag that I need to deal with. And so Haaland and Alvarez up front, away at Chelsea. It's not an amazing fixture. And Man City do have some challenging fixtures in the next few weeks, but I know that come game week 16, when their fixtures are really, really nice, I am going to want to still have probably 2 Manchester City attackers. And bearing in mind that I've got some other areas of my team that need more work, and Man City still seem capable of scoring goals against whoever they face, I think it makes sense for me to just hold them for now. So let's move back to the goalkeeper position then, which is where my most likely transfer will be this week. Of course, it is dependent on the severity of some of the defender flags, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So I have been looking at what is the best goalkeeper combination to have from game week 16 onwards, and I kind of feel like Areola and Sanchez make a really good combination based on their prices and their ability to either get saves, clean sheets, or both. Chelsea's defence has actually been very good this season. I've been saying this on pretty much every video, and I'm anticipating being invested in their defence in game week 16 when their fixtures go from being horrible to amazing. And so they're the 2 goalkeepers on my mind. Areola I'm less fussed by because, of course, he's not been keeping clean sheets with the same level of regularity as I'd like. His fixtures are good and his price are good. His price is good as well. So I had been looking at those 2. And if it wasn't for these flags, I would be doing Flecken to Areola this week because then, of course, I get to have a much nicer fixture for West Ham, with their fixtures at the moment being nicer than Chelsea's at home against Nottingham Forest. And then bank the other transfer. Then the following week, I would probably sell Turner to get Sanchez. Even though it's a difficult fixture in game week 13 for them, it just means I have my goalkeeper rotation ready for game week 16 already nailed down in a week where in game week 13 I'm actually quite happy with how my team looks for that, provided everyone I currently own is fit. So that's why I talk about them being potential ideas. I may have to do something different though. And so I'm also thinking about Sam Johnston as well, because he looks like a fantastic set and forget goalkeeper based on the way that Crystal Palace have been playing. 3 of their next 4 fixtures look really good for defensive potential. Everton at home next, Luton away after that. West Ham away in game week 14, slightly harder, but we have seen West Ham sometimes misfire this campaign. And then Bournemouth at home in 15 is also another good one. So it's a tricky decision there because Sam Johnston is easily the best goalkeeper, in my opinion, for the next 4. However, Crystal Palace's fixtures do get harder around game week 16. And on my game week 16 wildcard-esque squad, that's not a wildcard, in a real sense, but is in effect, sort of. In that squad, I've been looking to offload my Crystal Palace players, and I need to find some way of covering them by then. Perhaps, maybe when I get to 16, that's when I get Sanchez in place of Johnston. So I need to make a decision now over whether or not I just try and maximise the next 4 with Johnston and then maybe make some goalkeeper moves later on, or do I start building towards the best goalkeeper combination now for later on, if my team can survive that. And that's why I said the goalkeeper transfer decision is going to depend on what injury updates we get on some of these other guys. So let's move to defence now. As I said, Tsimikas almost certainly for now coming in for Van der Ven to have Tsimikas, Anderson and Cash as my defensive 3. I'll talk about Tsimikas first. I've mentioned this a couple of times this week, especially on the General's Orders podcast, so go watch that if you haven't seen this week's episode. I'm not too worried about Tsimikas' involvement in the Liverpool team this week because, of course, he did miss that game. He missed starting the game against Luton, and we sort of wonder if maybe that was perhaps influenced by the opposition. Luton very good at set pieces, for example, so having an additional centre-back player on the pitch, and Joe Gomez might be useful in those situations, and he can play left back. Although, funnily enough, the last time he started at left back was actually way back in 2015. So if you're beating yourself up about the fact that Tsimikas didn't start, I don't think you should, because who on earth saw that coming? I mean, I don't think any of us really would have expected someone who'd not played at left back for 8 years to come in and do it for a very favourable fixture for Liverpool. A home game against Brentford, you would like to expect that that is a game where they're going to need a bit more insightfulness down the left-hand side from their fullback. So I'd be very shocked if he doesn't come back in to start for this one. And I do think the fact that Liverpool didn't look particularly good going forward against Luton, they weren't quite at their best, I think would indicate that Tsimikas kind of needs to come back in. So hopefully Jurgen Klopp sees it the same way as many of us did in terms of that game. So Tsimikas I think is going to start. But do I really want to start him for this one? I'm not entirely sure because I don't really think that Liverpool are going to keep a clean sheet here because Mbeumo especially is in good form. Brentford know how to go and frustrate big teams with the way they line up with their 5-3-2, for example. So I'm not enamoured about starting him, but I may have to, depending on what else comes up. So what else am I waiting on then? So the most important one that I think will make a lot of my decisions for me is probably going to be what happens with Cash. Now, if Cash is fit, then I easily start him against Fulham because I think it's a great fixture. Villa always much better at Villa Park. Fulham don't particularly score many goals, so I think there's a high ceiling opportunity for Cash in that one. With Van de Ven, I expect him to be out long term. I will sell him probably if Cash is ruled out of this one and, maybe sort of given a week or two off because I would want to hold Cash for a bit longer, whereas Van de Ven, I think, needs to go at the earliest opportunity. However, the other person I'm waiting on is Estupiñán. We know that he is back in training. The reason he's still red flagged is because he was ruled out of game week 11, but we're told his return is not far off. Now, we do have a European fixture for Brighton this week, so hopefully we get a bit more information in the build-up to that one from De Zerbi, or possibly even in the game itself. We might see Estupiñán named on the bench and come on and get some substitute minutes. If that happens, then I think I will start him, because having him start at home against Sheffield United, who've been awful defensively this season, I think high ceiling from him there as well. And if he's fit, then I think I might genuinely not make a defensive transfer in a world where Estupiñán is fit, Cash is ruled out, and Van de Ven, I'm not really going to talk much more about him because I'm fairly confident he's going to be out for some time. But I don't mind not selling him now. I won't lose much value on him because he's not very widely owned, so I'm probably not going to lose much value. So if I can start Estupiñán, Tsimikas and Anderson, allowing me to resolve my goalkeeper situation with one of my transfers this week, and then banking the other, I think that gets me through the game week enough. And then that would involve benching Cash and Van de Ven, and then just seeing what happens beyond that. I think starting Estupiñán, Tsimikas and Anderson is not awful. I would be happy to do that. So that's what I'm waiting on, really. I need updates on Cash and I need updates on Estupiñán, and we'll see what we get from their managers about that. Midfield, obviously, is also a bit of a concern because Maddison has this injury. We don't really know much about it at all, to be honest. We haven't got any kind of early assessment because it didn't look as bad as the Van de Ven one did. So it means that Postecoglou's assessment of it after the Chelsea game was very non-committal, as we normally see at the end of a game when a player's had to come off. Now, I still want to keep him for as long as possible. I think he's a great season-keeping option. So it would have to be him ruled out for several weeks, maybe even months, for me to consider selling him. Because if he is a bit of a doubt for this week, I'm not all that upset about having to maybe start Archer against Brighton, because we know that Brighton don't keep too many clean sheets, to be honest. Just going back to Estupiñán, obviously I would want to put him in for his attacking potential. We know they don't keep many clean sheets, so I'm not expecting much defensive returns from him. So I don't feel like I'm being too hedging my bets by putting Archer in as well, because he obviously just scored in the last game, and he's popped up with the odd goal in a couple of favourable fixtures so far this season. So if that's what it takes, again, to bank a transfer, I'm happy to do it. Which might, again, sound counterintuitive, but the thing is, the way that my team managed to get through the last injury crisis and the transfers that opened up for me to really maximise the starting 11, rather than necessarily worry about the bench, having loads of injured players on it, I think I can still do that for now. It's really the Christmas period when I would want to start strengthening that bench. Like, if my team looked like this in the middle of December, I would be making more transfers, you can be sure of that. But at the moment, I'm just going to try and get through. So the Maddison one, I'm not too worried about. If I had to sell him, because he's out long term, I'd probably look at Palmer or Bowen, because they're two players who would be in my Game Week 16 wildcard if I wildcarded then, or Palmer is almost certainly going to be in my Game Week 19 wildcard if I can hold it off for as long as then. So they're the people that I would get for Maddison if I needed to, but whether or not I'd have to sell him for this week, again, questionable, because I think that I'd be happy starting Diaby, Matoma, Salah, Haaland, Alvarez and Archer as a front midfield four and forward three, if that's what it came to be honest. So that is the situation in terms of my transfers. Appreciate this a bit long and convoluted, but I'm anticipating everybody else's transfer plans to be in a similar state for this game week. The only other thing to talk about, of course, is the captaincy. Now, as much as I'm happy to have two attackers for Man City against Chelsea, I do prefer Arsenal's fixtures in this particular game week compared to Man City, of course. Chelsea, whilst it's a game I think City can score in, I'm more confident that Arsenal will thrash Burnley than I am that Man City will thrash Chelsea. And the same is true of Salah against Brentford as well. Whilst Plus, Brentford's defence hasn't been amazing this season, and I expect Salah to get something. It doesn't feel like the plum fixture that Burnley at home offers. Now, a quick word on Burnley, then we'll talk about Saka. So with Burnley, I do just think that there is no longer this concern around Burnley being able to go to teams away from home, stick everyone behind the ball, play a low block, frustrate the opponent, and then sort of take strength from the fact that they're stopping the team, sense the frustration in the crowd and use that to kind of keep themselves going throughout the game, being hard to break down. That's what we saw they were like under Sean Dyche, but that's not really there anymore because with Vincent Kompany, he just goes for a completely different play style. He's had his most success, of course, as the Clarence manager by basically bossing the Championship with a very Pep Guardiola-esque style of possession-based football and inverted fullbacks. Unfortunately, and of course this is no disrespect to the players there, I do just think that the players that he has currently available don't have sufficient Premier League experience to be able to week on week play that type of football against the best teams in the country. It's definitely not going to work against an Arsenal team that is very good in terms of its technical ability. And we haven't seen Burnley, in my opinion, learn to adapt to these big games yet. Or games against bigger opponents under Kompany. The fact that they are trying to play the same style of football regardless of opponent, I think is kind of damaging them. I'd be very surprised if later on in the campaign we haven't seen either Kompany have to really sort of, bite the bullet and change his style in some way, or possibly they might even get a new manager who's more suited to getting that group of players to be able to grind out results against big teams rather than try and play them off the park, because it's not going to work. That's a team that I like captaining a player against, to be honest, and of course having Saka against him against that team is good. However, I am a bit concerned about the fact that Saka's had one shot in the box in the last three. Now, there have been some tricky fixtures within that because they, of course, have played Newcastle and Chelsea in that run. So I'm kind of hoping that the opposition is just going to trigger a return to form for him, which is not a great place to be in for the captaincy. But I just think that Brentford at Anfield is actually going to be quite a challenge for Liverpool, especially based on the way they played against Luton. And yeah, captaining someone away at Chelsea right now, a bit concerned about that as well. We'll see how I feel later on in the week, but I brought Saka back in Game Week 10 in place of Son with the view to captain him for this fixture because it looked like the best fixture. It still seems that way, so I'm happy just to carry on with the plan. And it might be a bit of a differential as well because some people still haven't got Saka back in, so captaining someone that people don't have, who's on penalties most of the time when he's on the pitch, Ødegaard being injured, whilst it does perhaps hinder Arsenal's attack, does remove one person from the penalty pecking order for Saka to have to contend with. So I don't think it's too much of a stretch to kind of think maybe we get an assist and possibly a penalty in this game. And if I can just get that from Saka when some people don't own him, and I've also still got Salah and Haaland who will probably still be in the captaincy conversation this week, I think that's going to put me in a good place. So yeah, that's the state of my team right now. Hopefully some of that information has helped you guys. If you've got similar problems, let me know in the comments if that's the sort of situation that you are looking at the moment. Now, I promised a little bit of a look at the upcoming fixtures as well, so I'll just run through some of my favourite stats and tables from the members area that have helped fuel some of these decisions before we go. And of course, if you look below me, you can see, of course, we've still got 20% off on the memberships. And yeah, go and sort yourself out with one for Game Week 12 if you haven't done so already. So the season ticker at the moment, currently top of that season ticker between Game Weeks 12 and 17. The next 6 is West Ham. They've got Forest at home, Burnley away, Crystal Palace at home, Fulham away, and Wolves at home. So it's one of the reasons why I'm thinking about Areola for those games, but also Bowen as a possible replacement for Maddison. Of course, Kudus also been doing very well as well. He could be a good option. I think I prefer Bowen at the moment, but Kudus may prove me wrong on that one. We've also got Arsenal in the top 6 of the season ticker as well. They've got Burnley at home next, Brentford away after that, Wolves at home, then Luton away, Aston Villa away, Brighton at home, I should say. And of course, just one last word on Arsenal, actually, is that if I do have to make a defensive transfer, then it's probably going to be an Arsenal defender that I bring in if I need a new defender. It would probably be Gabriel. Because he's priced in such a way that I could rotate him and bench him for the Brentford game in Game Week 13, the Villa game in Game Week 16, and the Brighton game in Game Week 17, and start him for the other 3, because I do like those fixtures. So if I have to make a defender transfer, it's this table here, this season ticker, I should say, that is fueling me wanting to go for him in particular. And then the teams that have bad fixtures over the next 6, you've got Luton, Chelsea, Villa, and Spurs, and Brentford in the bottom 5. And so, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm sort of thinking about I could sell cash if I need to. It could be cash to Gabriel that is the move that needs to happen, perhaps. So we will see. As I said, all of that is dependent on those injury updates. And then in terms of the teams that are defending well right now, there's 6 teams, I should say, that are in the best form in the last 4 matches for fewest big chances conceded. Newcastle, Brighton, Everton, Arsenal, Aston Villa and Man City. So just further confirmation there that a Arsenal defender could be a good replacement for your injured defenders if you don't already have one. And then the teams to target who've got bad defensive numbers over the last 4. Luton, still bottom of the league for XGC over the last 4. Bournemouth as well. So Newcastle players I think are going to do very well this week. I mean, Anthony Gordon could even be a possible captaincy shout in this particular game week. Burnley, there they are, 3rd worst in the Premier League over the last 4. Sheffield United, of course, still in the bottom 4, but Man United and Nottingham Forest have also dropped down into the bottom 6. The most creative players so far over the last 4 matches, we've got Reece James now top of the list for 4 big chances created in the last 4 matches. Mentioned Chelsea's fixtures are going to get really nice from game week 16. Reece James is someone I am considering for investment at that time, because by then we'll know how fit he is, how often he's playing, and yeah, in the short space of time that he's had in his last 4 matches, he is one of the most creative players still. Szoboszlai also looking very good. He is level with Diaby and Trippier for 3 big chances created in the last 4, but he's also level with Palmer, Bernardo Silva and Ayer over at Brentford. The most persistent shooters over the last 4 matches, well, it's Salah and Nunez currently top of the list with 12 apiece in the box. We got Watkins and Solanke joint second with 11 apiece. Isak and Mbeumo, Jackson, Diogo Jota and Richarlison all have 9 each in the last 4 matches. Now, game week 14, one of my moves is probably going to be to get Mbeumo back. His numbers are dipped, that's why I sold him, and they've gone back up again since I've sold him, but the fixtures kind of make it difficult to get back on him straight away. Of course, Chelsea and Liverpool as 2 of the 3 fixtures of late. Because Liverpool coming up next, he's already played Chelsea. Game week 14, they got Luton. So I think that, bearing in mind his numbers are looking good, I think that'll be one to get him back. And he's also doing quite well for accuracy as well. So in the last 4 matches, it is Matheus Cunha at Wolves and Nunez as the top for shots on target in the last 4. Isak and Mbeumo are joint second for 7 shots on target each. We got Watkins, Jackson, Son, Haaland and Fernandes, all joint 3rd on 6 apiece. So yeah, and Mbeumo definitely sticks out from that list. I think getting him back in for game week 14 is very important for me to make sure I can do. And so rolling some transfers at the moment as best as possibly can gives me the opportunity to do that in a couple of weeks' time. So yeah, as I said, that's the state of my team. Hopefully it's helpful for you guys. Let me know what your plans are for game week 12 and get your membership sorted as well. If I haven't, have I mentioned that already? I'm not sure I have. So yeah, make sure you go and sort that out ahead of game week 12. But with that, I shall leave you fine folks to enjoy the rest of your prep for the next FPL deadline, and I shall see you next time. Bye.